So you're just not going to comment on that. My final kind of overwhelming comment of the comptroller's report, I find the most repetitive statement there was the town board did not oversee, or the town board did not have oversight. And I think that's an overwhelming, cause of a lot of problems in this town. It seems the town board needs to, rearrange itself to make sure it knows what's going on fiscally, to make sure that things don't happen, like we don't find out about the deficit in September from the state auditor who told us, because apparently no one on the town board knew about it.
We knew.
And lastly, yes or no question, are you still going to have your $10,000 donation to the library that you said you would?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
My compensation is reduced.
And just for full disclosure, Greg, you run a website that's very critical of this town board, if not the supervisor. And what I'd like to comment about is that we continue to fight on a divided town board. And we have ideological differences on how we spend money. And when that blog or that statement comes out that we were not aware of this deficit, we were well aware of it, okay? It was finalized when the town accountant then notified us of it. But you could post it on your website. But basically, we knew it. We mentioned it over and over again to stop the spending, whether it's a garbage contract or an air conditioning unit or how money is being spent. We have said it over and over and over again to this town board, and thus the reason I've always said we have ideological differences in how we spend money. However, it's your money. It's now come up to a 10% tax increase. I don't want it. The supervisor doesn't want it. The majority of this community doesn't want it, and I can't see it happening. I would implore this town board to reconsider and listen to what the people are saying, that a 10% tax increase, especially for the seniors, is unacceptable, that if the library closes, we can reduce months for the library, but bring it back when funding comes back. But these are not permanent closures. We want our services to continue. First and foremost, the highway department. We don't have a police department here. We do have a fire department. That's what people are concerned about most, that the roads are clear. You pick up the phone to call the police, they show up. Pick up the phone to call the fire department, they show up. But basically the library, museums, and things like that, we can probably do without for a few months until funding comes back. And I would implore this town board to consider that before they vote this evening.
Thank you. Yes.
Lynn Eckhart. I've been probably complaining about the budget longer than any of you guys have even been here, probably back to 1995. And I do understand, I think this is one of the worst budgets I've seen. But I also understand that it's because we have no more fund balance to make up any differences. And people really have to understand this, as hideous as it is. If you really look at this budget, the cuts right now are almost impossible. I was speaking to someone who was fired today, or laid off today, I should say, and it was really horrendous what's going to happen. I would like to say that this is something I don't want to go through. We don't want to go through next year. I'm not happy about it this year. So I'm going to ask the supervisor. And by the way, we did not hear about this fund balance and this deficit until September of this year. There was a lot of complaining about spending, but no one, and I come to every meeting, no one was told about this deficit. No one. So bear it in mind. No, it is true.
It is true.
It's absolutely the truth.
The comptroller was here in June. We talked about it.
Well, you might have known about it, Supervisor, but you did not make it public.
Lynn, make your point.
She did. She did.
Don't tempt me again.
Let's just, for full disclosure, also let people know who you are. Please identify yourself.
A resident.
My name is Lynn Eckhart. I live at 55 Maple Road in Brewster. Was there more you'd like to add?
Yeah, you're also the Democratic chairwoman, right? Okay. So when you're critical of this town board, when I ask for full disclosures, when you're critical of the town board, we need to understand why.
I am commenting as a private citizen.
And I understand your point of view when you do that, which is fine. But let's not make the personal attacks. What I've said is that we as a town board were made officially aware of this deficit in September by the town accountant. However, through the course of the year, we get a report from the accountant. And then back in August, I had sent an email to this town board critical of the town attorney's spending habits because the controller was here and nothing was done about it. So this is the thing that I continue to fight for, that when I send emails out, even as the one as recently as last week regarding the town clerk's office, where there is $17,000 where we can save. That was not included in this budget this evening. So those things need to continue to be looked at.
We're
There
also
is,
talking about the 2011 budget and the proposed 10% tax increase tonight.
I would consider it gross mismanagement. In any case, here's my concern. We have no fund balance. Is it likely, Supervisor, that we will have a fund balance at the end with the 10%? Will we have a fund balance, excuse me, less than 10%? Will we have a fund balance at the end of 2011?
Do
Do you want me to repeat the question?
Could you repeat that, please, Lynn?
Yes, I would like to know, I would like to...
Pardon me, I'll answer the question. There is money coming in from a commercial project that I mentioned earlier and from another source or two, which are not great amounts of money. Some of it's been spent in this budget. Some of it has been repayment for money out the door in prior years. We will be cash positive, but we will have a modest cash positive position. That's what the comptroller told us in June. That's what I had reported in June when they were here. And that's where we are. It has come to pass.
Could you tell us, please, what commercial project will be generating income for 2011? Please.
There is a commercial project which was mentioned earlier, Meadows at Dean's Corner.
That's residential.
Pardon me, residential. That's a development project. And then there are two additional commercial development projects, Crossroads 312, which I assign a low probability, and I don't mean to make a market call or anything else for anyone or any investors or anything. I think it's a low probability that we'll be receiving funds from that project this year. And another one, which is the State Line. And again, I'm not making a market call or anything else about that project, but I'm assigning prudent. We need to be conservative rather than liberal in our revenue projections. That's a different component that hasn't even come up tonight in this final draft budget. And I'm assigning a low probability to the municipality receiving monies from that this year.
Okay. I would say, you know as well as I know, that it would be almost impossible for Crossroads to be approved, let alone generate any income. State Line was approved months ago, 6 months ago, maybe more. As far as I know, there's not a shovel in the ground and nothing going on that. So I think that's a little disingenuous. But here's my question.
We're talking about the 2011 budget tonight.
Well, that's the problem.
Yes, that's the problem. I asked you if we would have a surplus at the end of this year, and I don't believe we will. And here's my question. What unusual expenses do you anticipate in 2011? There were unusual circumstances this year. Are they going to continue? What do you see so that we don't have to go through this smoke and mirrors of I'm making it zero by pie in the sky cutting, and then we have to actually lay people off and ruin people's lives? So,
Lynn, that's an excellent point, and let me answer that. Part of the reason that I'm uncomfortable with this budget as proposed tonight for 2011 and the 10% tax increase is, in fact, operationally, this 10% tax increase is significantly higher. As I mentioned, we haven't talked about revenues, we haven't talked about appropriations line by line. But one of the revenue substitutes in this budget for tax dollars is capital accounts here at Town Hall. There's about around $300,000 in a capital account for Town Hall, plus or minus. And in excess of $275,000 of that, or thereabouts, is being allocated in this final budget as a substitute for raising property taxes beyond the 10% that we're talking about tonight. The real tax increase in this budget is in excess of 12% because of that misuse of capital in this budget. And that practice of substituting what cannot be recovered for revenues, capital, in other words, unexpended fund balance, capital accounts, however we want to categorize it, for tax revenues, was specifically criticized by the comptroller in the report I handed out earlier tonight. So Councilwoman Hudak, Councilman Gross, and Councilman Cullen are ignoring what the comptroller told us to do in order to utilize and drain these capital accounts to keep the tax increase artificially low.
That didn't
And I
answer my...
disagree with that practice.
Okay, that doesn't answer my question. And as a matter of fact, you were going to put $200,000 of possibly a sale of our open space land into miscellaneous when in fact that money's earmarked. So I don't know where you're coming from on this other stuff. But do you anticipate any expenses? Do you see anything on the horizon that we have to look at that's going to affect us for 2012? That's my question.
Well, with respect to unforeseen contingencies, in part, this is what the comptroller is talking about when the comptroller is directing us to retain a positive cash balance in a capital account, in an unexpended fund balance, or in a similar account. And the possibility that this account will be drained, the certainty that this account will be drained in this budget, and the possibility that we will need that account to meet a contingency in the future, next year, is a real risk. And it's one that I'm uncomfortable with. It's unnecessary. The comptroller has told us not to do it. They're going to do it anyway. And that's one of the reasons why I will vote against the budget as proposed. Tonight, if there's a vote, and hopefully we'll defer it tonight, we'll have a special meeting, and we'll be able to make further cuts in the next couple of days.
I don't think you answered the question, but I'm giving up because I know other people want to speak. And I would like this on the record, that my question on whether you anticipate, as Chief Budget Officer, any unusual expenses next year. At this point, you don't seem to know. One final
And if
point.
they're unforeseen, they're unforeseen. That's why we need a contingency, and that's why the comptroller is directing us to do it.
I'm asking you
But
if
there are
you
other
see
folks who would
anything.
like to
I
go
understand
back
that.
and
I have one last bit
There are
that
other
I
folks who
want
would
that
like to
will
speak.
actually generate revenue for the town, and I'll hand in the letter. I won't read it. But presently on the Architectural Review Board, the applicants are not paying, the town is paying for the applicants as far as, which doesn't do on the planning board, but we pay for the consultation of the architect and the town planner. In future, it's not going to generate lots of money, but will generate some revenue, and it won't cost us money. I'm going to suggest that the applicants be billed for the services that the town professionals render. So if you could look into that, and I'll pass this into Ruth. But I'd really like this done as soon as possible. Thank you.
Rick?
Okay, as Liz suggested, I spent a good deal of this afternoon going over line by line the 168 pages of the budget. So forgive me for not having my facts, but in the tax assessor and the tax receiver lines, how much did you propose reducing?
In my
In your
budget,
proposed when you zeroed them,
which is called the tentative budget, which I referred to as the first draft,
right? How?
there was a $25,000 total allocation for those two departments in contemplation of consolidating those departments with Putnam County. 2 years ago, the county had allocated $60,000. We were chatting about it for an interface.
Yeah.
This year, I had allocated in my budget $25,000 as an interface.
But we zeroed it from last year to your proposed. What was the amount of the reduction? I think it was around $170,000 for those two departments.
That sounds about right in round numbers.
Now-
Maybe, no, it would have been more because it's about $250,000 total this year.
In that area of $200,000.
Yes.
I come to most of these meetings when I'm not otherwise at other meetings, and I sat through the same thing last year, and the same identical comments came up with, we should consolidate assessors, tax receivers, but it can't be done in that. Now, since you proposed that last year and it wasn't doable, what happened in the preceding 12 months other than nothing to propose the same $200,000 reduction without having an agreement? And can you tell us, because this sounds reasonable, if we can get it, understand that the assessor's probably going to have to move and be paid by the counties. What are you going to do so that by next year you can come back and say, here is the plan approved by the county to do this, rather than the last week before this, we hear about this wonderful reduction and then go, oh man, they got to hire